Hello and welcome to another Unreal Engine 5 tutorial. In this video we'll be creating a health system like Assassin's Creed Valhalla, where we can walk up and it says E to eat, and one by one we can click E and the tops fall off, and if you look to the bottom left you can see that it now says 1 and the bar is now halfway full. If I were to take some damage, then I can click H and it transfers that to my health bar. It also has a max of 2, so now as I walk through this I'm adding health, and I can't go any higher than this, and it can only transfer the amount of rations as I have. So you can see I'm at 45 health. I click H to heal and now I'm at 60 because the bar wasn't full all the way. So the first thing we want to do is get the starter content if you don't have it already. And that's because it has the steam particle effect, and we'll need that for the cooking pot. If you don't already have it, then you can come up here to the add button, click add feature or content pack, go over to content, starter pack, and then add to project. It'll take a second to load up, but once it does, you'll see this here, and then we'll be able to access the steam later. The other thing that we want to do is go to blueprints, and we want to fix the coin pouch before we duplicate it to make the pot. So go ahead and open up the coin pouch, and there's one thing that we need to add to make it better. So over on event interact, we want to drag this out, hold down B for branch, and then plug this in here. Next we want to create a new variable. It needs to be a boolean and call it can interact, and then we'll go ahead and plug this in here, and then off of true, because we only want to interact if we can interact. So if it's true, then we can do all the stuff. And after we're done with all of this, can interact, we want to set this to false. So that way we can't interact after. And then up here on the sphere, not the sphere big, just the regular sphere one, at the end of this, we want to drag out can interact and then can interact. So we only want to be able to interact if we are colliding with the small sphere. Before, you could interact if you're within this big sphere, which we don't want. We only want to do it if you can see the interact message. So now this will work well. And now we can go back, and with the coin pouch selected, we can Control C, Control V to copy and paste. And then I'm going to call this BP pot 01. So then we'll go ahead and open up the pot blueprint, and most of the stuff is going to be the same. We just need to switch out some things in here. If you didn't watch the last video where we added the assets with all the stuff in it, they're all free. There's a link in the description. If you want to learn how to just easily drag and drop the UE5 files into here, make sure to watch the previous video. There's also a video up top you can click on, that'll show you how to do it. But we have all the stuff in here, including all the pots, and the materials are all set up. So back in the pot blueprint, we want to select the static mesh and then type in pot 01. If you don't see it, you can come over here, select it, and then click the arrow, and then that'll get the pot 01. And I'm just going to click the arrow right here, because I want this to be a size of 1, that way it looks normal. Then I'm going to click on the default scene root, add a static mesh, and we want to change, right now it's set as the pot 01, we need to change that to the pot 01 lid. Then we can drag this to be on the correct position. And I'm going to come over here and round up to 73, just so it's a clean number. And with the pot selected, I want to scroll down here to the collision and then to custom. And I want to only overlap with the pawn. I don't want to collide with it. Next, I'm going to add the steam. So with the coin selected, I'm going to just change the name real quick to pot_1. And then next, we're going to click add and then type in particle system. We want to do the cascade particle system, and with that selected, the template, I'm going to click on that, and then you can scroll down and see there's steam. So now we have the steam, and I'm going to drag that just more towards the top, so that looks good. And then also I want to get the widget dot, make sure that's in the center, and then get the widget elute, and you can see it's way up there, so I'm going to drag that down so that we'll be able to see it, and then you can compile. And if you wanted it to say something other than loot, you can click on this. You can see it says widget prompt. If you click browse to asset, you can see right there, you can copy, paste, and you could do eat or something like that, and then double click on that, And all you need to do is change the text from loot to eat, compile, go to pot 01, and then type in eat, and there it is. So if I click on the browsed asset, drag it in. Alright, next we're going to go into the event graph, and we're going to change a couple things. So first on the event interact, you can see it looks like this. It shouldn't look like that. I'm going to delete that, go to the interfaces, interact, right click, implement interface. There you go, now you can see it looks like that, and then we'll just plug that in. And then we want to come over to the timeline, and instead of animating the scale, we're going to be animating the location of the pot lid so that it slides off when you interact with it. So this is going to be the starting value, and then this is going to be the ending value. So if we come over here and I click on the pot lid, you can see that it was at 0, but now this is changing. So if you watch the red one, when I change it, it was at 0, but I want it to go to like 42. So that'll be good. I'll actually do 40. So we go to 0 to 40 on the X. So I'll turn that back to 0. So I want to go to 0 to 40. And then I also want to click on the timeline. You can see it goes pretty fast. It's a 0.25. I'm going to change that to 1. And then I'm going to click on this one up here and change the time to 1. And then I'll click these to make it look right, and just drag that down, and then compile an event graph. And then we need to change this to be setting the location, so I'll delete that. And then I want to drag out this one, and you can see that's the pot lid. So I'm going to F2 just to call this pot lid 01, and then go to event graph, drag that out to get a reference. And then I want to set relative location, and then I'll plug this in to update, and then right click on the location, split structure, and we're changing the X. And I need to get the values for these, so I'm going to click on the pot lid. The Y is 0, but the Z is 73. So I'm going to change that to 73 so it stays on the correct axis. And then on finished, I want to get the pot lid and set simulate physics, and then I'll plug that into finished, take that to true, and then I want to get this over here, the can interact, and then hold down D for delay, and we want a delay of 3 seconds. And then I'll copy this, paste it, scroll down and plug in the pot lid, and then I'll untick simulate physics. So what we do is we're sliding the lid over, and once it finishes sliding, then we're going to simulate physics so it falls to the floor, and then we'll wait 3 seconds and then turn it off just so it's not simulating physics the entire time. Alright, so right now the spheres are way too big, so I'm going to scale these down. For the inner one, I'm going to do 5.1. For the outer one, I'm going to do 8, so that's looking better. And you can change the sizes. I might actually make this one a little bit bigger. And remember, the outside one is when the inner dot shows, so you can see that you can interact with it. And then the center sphere is when you can actually interact, and it shows the interact prompt. So when I enter the first circle, you can see there's a dot in the middle of it, and then when I enter the next circle, you can see it says E to eat, and then if I click E, it slides out and then falls to the ground. You can see that it's not colliding with the mesh at the moment. That's because we forgot to activate collision for the pot. So we need to go to the BP pot and then click on the pot base and scroll down, and for collision we want to do block all. And now if I walk up to it, I can't walk through it, and if I click E, it slides off, activates collision, and then slides to the floor. So now we need to set up the code so that when I take the rations, it'll give me rations and health so that I can use them when I take damage. Alright, so I'm going to copy and paste this one real quick, and then that one's already automatically named BP pot 02. I'll open that up, go to viewport, and I'm just changing out the meshes. So I'm going to do pot 02 and then pot lid 02, and you can see it's a lot higher up, so I'm going to drag that down. I'm going to do 35, and then we also need to change the number in here to 35 for the Z, so then that will work as well. And then we also need to change the position of the widgets, so the dot, I want that to be in the middle, and the elute, I want that to be right above the lid. So now if I drag this one in as well, and I'm actually just going to rotate them because I don't want them falling on the back, and you can see that I can't use the other one, and that's because I forgot to add one line of code in the pot. After we use the pot, we need to deactivate the spheres. Otherwise you can see that the collision is overlapping and it thinks I'm still trying to interact with this pot instead of this one. So if we go back into the pots, the event graph, I want to go after the set visibility, and I'm going to select this, drag it out. Alright, and then after this I want to drag out the spheres, the regular sphere and the big sphere, and then I want to set collision enabled, except I want it to say no collision. So I'll drag these in here, play from start, and then I'll plug this one in as well so it does both of them, and then I'll select these, copy, and then go to the pot 2, and I'll do the same thing, select these, drag it out, and then I'll paste and plug these in. So now if I walk up to it and click E, I can use both of them now. Alright, so now we can get into adding health. So you can close out of the pots, we don't need those anymore. And what we're going to do next is go to the content, third person, blueprints, and then we want to open up the third person character. Alright, and then we want to go back to the third person input actions, and you can see I created a new one called heal. You can just copy and paste any one of these and then rename it to heal, and then go to input, IAMS default, and then you'll click up here to add, and then you'll select the heal, and then you want to add one of these, click on the keyboard, and then click the key binding that you want. I did H for heal because that makes sense for me. So then once we have that set up, I want to go back to the third person, and I want to right click, type IA heal, and then put that in there. And then I want to right click and add a custom event. I'm going to call this event any health, and then in the inputs I'm going to make that a integer and then call this health input. Alright, and then we're going to do a function. I'm going to call this any health, and in here I'm also going to add a function. It's going to be an integer and it's going to be called health input. So back in the event graph I'm going to get the any health and then just plug that right in. And then I want to create another function, and then I'm going to call it heal, or heal up I guess, and then I'll drag this out and plug it into started. Alright, and then before we go any further in here, we can close out of that and then go to the content, UI, and then go to the HUD. And in here we want to make it look like this, so we have the number and the bar right there. So I'm just going to copy and paste this health bar, or the mana bar, and then just scale it down, and I'm going to rename it to rations progress bar. And then I also need to click on these and make sure that they're anchored to the bottom. Some of these aren't, so I'm just going to make sure they are. And then I want to get some text and drag it into the canvas panel, and I'm going to change the Z order to 2 and size content. And then I'm just going to change the text to 0, and then just drag this in the middle right here. And then I'm going to name this text to ration index text, and then check is variable. And then I want to drag this out and then come up here to the update health bar, copy and paste, and then we'll call this update rations. So in here it looks a little complicated, we don't need hardly any of this stuff, so I'm just going to delete, and all we need is the percent, so we'll plug this in, and we needed the divide actually, so we'll plug this in like this, just like with the health, and plug it in like that. But the only thing that we need to change is instead of health, we need to get the rations. So next in the event graph, I'm going to get the update rations, plug it in. I want to get the max health, but I also want to get rations. So I'm going to come down here, click plus, and then call this rations, and then integer. So then we'll plug that into there, and I'll just hover over this waffle looking thing, and then drag it up just so it looks better. And then I want to copy and paste this. And then for this, I want to get the ration index, and that will also be an integer. So ration index, just plug that in. And then for the text, we'll need to change that to the ration index text. And then in the update rations, instead of updating the health bar, we need to update the rations progress bar. So then that's all that we need to do in the HUD. So we can close out of that, and then we can come back to here, and we need to add those same variables in here. So we need the ration index, and that'll be an integer, and then we'll add another one. We'll just call that rations, and then one more, and we call this max ration index. Next, I'm going to double click on any health, and we'll get started doing this. This is for if we interact with anything that has health, like if we pick up the rations pot, it'll run through this code, determining whether we need to add it to our health bar or to the rations bar, which we can then save for later to heal up. Alright, so right off the bat, I want to drag this off and promote to local variable, not variable, local variable, and I want to call this health in, and then I'm going to create another one. I'm going to call this temp, short for temporary. So starting off with this, I want to get a branch And I want to check if this index is 0 or not, because that'll depend if we put it in the health bar or if we put it in the index bar. So we'll drag off of here, click equal, and then we want to get the ration index and plug that in and keep that as 0 because we're checking if it's 0. So if it does equal 0, then we want to set the health, and that'll be setting the health bar. And if we aren't, then we want to check what level of the rations are at, because right now I'm going to set the ration index to 2, so I can have a max of 2 saved loadouts that I can use for my health. So I'm going to check what I have for that. So I'm going to drag off of here, click equal, and to do this I'm going to get the max health and the health, because if they equal the same, that means it's over, so we're going to plug that into false. Then after that, if it's true, I want to check, I'm going to copy that just to get the equal, and I'm going to get the max ration index and the ration index because I want to check if it's already at the max. Right now it's at 2, so I don't want it to go any higher than 2. If it's false, then I want to update the HUD, and if it's true, I want to set the rations. Alright, but first we're going to go to setting the health because that's the simple part of it. So off of here, I'm going to drag off of here, click plus, and then I want to get the health, and then I want to get the health in because that's the amount of health that we're adding. So whatever number is being inputted in here is the health that we're going to be adding. Next, I want to check if the health is going over the max health, because if it is, then we want to subtract the difference between that and then add it to the next level so that we can save it in the rations bar. So I'm going to get the greater, and I'm just going to copy this. It's the same inputs. We just plug it in here. We're checking to see if it's greater. If it isn't, then we don't have to worry about it. We just update the HUD. If it is, then we need to subtract the health from the max health, and we actually need to change this to max health. I forgot about that. So max health, we're checking if the health is greater than max health, and if it is, I'm going to set the temp, and this is like the temporary health that we save, and then we want to subtract. So we're subtracting the health from the max health because we want to get the difference of that so that it will equal the max health. So after this, I want to set the health, and I want to set it to the max health. So we have this value saved here, so we can go ahead and save this to the max health, so that's as normal, and we'll have this to use to add it to the next level. So next I'm going to get a branch, and we want to see if the rations is already bigger than the health, like if it goes over and we get a bunch of health. So I'm going to drag off of here, click equal, and then I want to get the rations and the max health. And you could do a max rations, however, just for simplicity and just for it to make sense, I'm going to make the max health going to be the same max rations, because the max rations bar should be able to hold the same amount as the health bar because it will be able to fill it up all the way. So that just makes sense. So if it does equal it, then we want to update the HUD. If it doesn't, we want to get the ration index, and then we want to +1. So in this stage, when we're setting the health, the next one is almost always going to just be 0. So right now it's at 0 and we're adding 1 to it, but there's a chance where it might not be. So instead of just setting the ration index to 1, we're going to add 1. And that same thing we're going to do down here just so it's procedural. And then after that we want to set the rations to 0, and then we're going to call the function inside of the function. So we're going to get event any health, and then I'm going to get the temp, and this is just going to do all of the code all over again, so that way we can add the temp value to the ration index. I know this is probably pretty complicated, but if you stick with it, it'll make sense in the end. So next we want to update the HUD after this, and then this is it for the top layer of the code. So it's quite a bit, but it's kind of the same thing down here just for the rations. So I'm just going to select all of this, press C to comment, and I'm going to type index equals 0. So we only run this code if the index equals 0, which means that we don't have any rations saved already, and we're just adding to the health bar. but if it were to go over the health amount, then we would do the event any health anyways, and you can see the temp right here. That's the value that we set from subtracting the health and the max health to get the difference between that. So that's the amount that we'll be adding to the rations in the next round when we call it again. And then I want to switch this to rations as well, and then switch this to rations. And for some reason that says max mana. I meant to put max health, so that means I did it wrong up here as well. So max health, not max mana, is what we would be doing. So with the rations and max mana. So we're just doing the same thing up here, doing the checks, adding the rations from the health in, and then checking if the rations is greater than max health. Alright, and then right here I accidentally put max mana. We need to do max health, so just drag that into there to change that. And this is basically the same thing as this, so I'm just going to drag all of this, just like that, copy and paste. So now we can plug this into here, and we just want to switch these to rations. So I'll change these to rations, I'll change these to rations, and I guess I put that as max mana as well. So I need to come up here and change that back to max health as well, my bad. So we have that max rations, 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 and then the temp, switch that to rations, and then instead of setting the health, we need to set the rations. And this is already set the rations, so we're good for that. And then this is all the same, so that's all good. Alright, next we're gonna copy the stuff up here again, and then we'll paste it down here, and then just plug this in here. And then over here, after we check if the rations equals the max health, with this stuff right here, we just want to delete that. And off of true we have update HUD. Off of false I want to get a branch, so I'll plug that in. And then off of this I want to get an equal. And then I want to check the ration index and the max ration index. And off of true I want to update the HUD again. And then off of false I want to do event any health. So it's basically the same, we just changed it out for this. So now that we have all of this code created, we can go to event graph, and then up here we're going to click on heal up, and this will be for when we click H to heal. First though, I'm going to go to update HUD, and we need to plug in these values right here. You can see so we have the ration index, we're going to plug in ration index, and then I'm going to drag this up and then get the rations right there. And then so now we have the rations, I'll drag that, move it down. Alright, and then just so I can make this better, I'm going to use these right here. If you don't remember these, we made these in the health bar tutorial. You can find it up here if you haven't watched it yet. They're just some simple damage and health. I'm going to go into the health, and you can see I've already done it. You want to get event begin play, get the player character, cast to the third person character, drag off, and then promote to variable, so it's like that. And in here I just have a sphere and a box, and on event begin overlap for the box, and in here I'm just going to get the third person character, and then I want to do event any health, so I'm going to call that. And in the health input I just have a random integer in range, so it'll be either 15 or 30 of health, so that's pretty simple. And the damage, we already set this up with the apply damage and stuff, so make sure to watch the health bar video to set that up. And then I just have them dragged into the scene so that we can see how it looks. And you can see down below it says 2, that's not right. In the third person character I need to click on the ration index, I need to change that to 0. And the max ration index is the thing that needs to be 2. Alright, and then we need to come over here, and we can just delete this heal right here, we don't need that anymore. And then I'm going to rename this to just heal. And if yours isn't working like mine, that's probably because I accidentally, in the event any health, I accidentally did event any health, so it's just calling itself. So I need to delete that, and then I need any health. And then back in the any health, we need to actually change this. So after the temp, we minus that after we set this. And here, we need to do a different check, and that's going to be the less, and we want to get the ration index and the max ration index. And then I'm going to go to the blueprints, and I'm going to open up the pots, and in here, instead of adding a coin, I'm going to delete that, and then off of event begin play, I want to cast to the third person character, get the player character, and then promote it to variable. So then down here, as the third person character, I want to do event any health. So off of false, I'm going to plug that in. And for the health input, I'm going to do random integer in range. So 15 and 30. And then I'm going to copy this, go to pot 02, paste it in, and then right click, create variable, scroll down, and then in here delete where the coin stuff was, select all of this, and then paste it. And for the coins, instead of this, we're going to use the pot interact, and there's going to be a link in the description, and these sounds will be in the tutorial folder, so it'll be the same thing where you right click, show and explore, and in the folder there'll be UE assets, and you'll see there's a fire swoosh and a cooking pot lid and also a pot interact, so they'll look just like these ones, and you'll want to copy those out of the tutorial folder and then just paste them right into here, and then they'll show up right here. In the queue you may need to replace these, so just click on these and then you'll switch them out for those, but other than that it should work perfectly. So in the pots, we'll get the pot Q, and then we'll do the same for the other one, pot Q. So now if we play, and then I open those up, it's a little loud, so I'm going to open up the Q, and the volume multiplier, I'm going to change that to 0.4, so that's better. And then if I open those up, you can see that looks perfect, except it's not adding anything to the rations bar. It's upping the ration index, because it's at 1 now, but it's not adding any of the ration stuff. So I can close out of all this stuff, and if I go back to the character and go to any health, and then down here off of this branch up here, it says equal. It's supposed to be less than or equal. That's a pretty big difference, so we'll plug that in and then delete that one. There we go. And then make sure to come down here and save selected if you haven't done that already. So now if I click play and come over here, you can see that the rations bar goes up, and I can continue to walk through this green thing. However, once I get to the top, it's not going any higher. It's supposed to go to 2, so we need to go back and fix that as well. Alright, and then following this line on the top, we'll come to after the temp and the rations. We actually want to switch these. So on true, we set it, and then on false, we go to update the HUD. So if I click play, I can take these, does the right thing, adding it, and if I go all the way up, I can go to 2, and then it'll stop. So that's doing what it's supposed to do. And if I take damage, it adds that first, and if I take damage again, you can see it does the health before it adds to the rations, which is what it's supposed to do. So that's working. Next, we'll set up so that if I have some damage and I click H, it'll transfer what's inside of the ration bar into my health bar. So that one is a lot easier. We just go into the heal, so just up here where we click the H, heal, we go inside of here, and I want to do hold down B for branch, and then get an equal, and I want to check if the health and max health are equal, because I don't want to use it if my health is already full. Off of true, I'm going to update the HUD. Most likely it's not going to change anything. And off of false, I want to get another branch, and then I want to get a equal, and then I'll get rations and leave that as 0, because I want to see if the rations are equal to 0, because I don't want to give anything if I don't have anything. So then off of here, I'll update the HUD again. Again, most likely nothing changed. Next, I'm going to set the health. So off of false, set the health. And then off of here, I want to clamp integer and the value. I want to drag off and get an add. And for the max, I want to do the max health because that's the max that it should be. And then I want to get the rations and the health. So we're adding the rations and the health together, and we're clamping it between 0 and the max health. So that way it doesn't go over 100. Next, we're going to play the sound at 2D. And this sound effect will also be in the link in the description in the tutorial folder. It's just a simple ration sound. Then I want to set the ration index, and I'm going to do minus, and then plug that in and do 1. You can also get the ration index and then do minus minus, and that'll do the same thing, just minus 1. It just makes more sense this way for me, but either way works. Then after this, I want to get a branch, and then I want to get a equal, and I want to get the ration index. So I'm going to check if the ration index is at 0. And if it is, then I want to set the rations to 0. If it isn't, I want to set the rations to the max health. Because if the ration index is 0, that means I'm only on my health bar, and I shouldn't have any rations saved. If I was on 2 and I went down to 1 rations, then I should still have a full thing of rations left. And then after this, I want to update the HUD, and then I can connect these together like that. Alright, so I'm going to select this, and then type in index is over 0. So now that that's all set up, I can compile, save, and then play. So I'm going to take some rations from the pots, and then I'm going to take some damage, and then if I click H, you can see it goes all the way up. And if I go very low, then if I heal, you can see it doesn't go all the way up, because this is transferring what's in there into here. And if I go back up again, if I have health in my rations bar, but I go all the way down, then I'll still die. Alright, so that's all for this video for making a Assassin's Creed style health bar. Alright, so in the next video I'm going to show you how to import custom characters, and we'll be using Sketchfab to get the characters, and then Mixamo to animate so that we can finally get a good character in here. No offense to the default character. Anyways, stay tuned for the next video, and I'll see you guys next time.